Mr. Barnhart, could you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
I served in World War II in the Army Air Corps.
And what was your rank?
Captain.
And can you tell me where you served?
Well, in the course of the several years, I was in a lot of places, but the primary thing was in combat in Europe with the 356 Fighter Group.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist in the service?
I enlisted. The draft board was after me. I was in college. The draft board was after me, and I found that if I joined the Air Force Reserve, Air Corps Reserve, that they would let me stay there and graduate and then report for duty. And that's what I did. I joined the Air Corps Reserve, took all the physicals and all that for pilot training, and stayed in school. They were supposed to let me graduate, but in the second half of my junior year in aeronautical engineering, this was at Tri-State College in Golden, Indiana, I got a letter. It gave me just 10 days to report for duty.
Okay, well, I don't know whether you answered the question, the next question or not. You were an aeronautical engineer.
I started that way.
Did you join the branch of service to stay in school or because you wanted to be in the Air Force because of that? Was there a...
I joined the Air Force Reserve to stay out of the draft.
Okay.
But there were other reserves too.
Uh-huh.
I took that one because I was very, very interested in aviation.
Okay.
So they had put into their training something that wasn't there until they started taking non-graduate people, and that was called the College Training Detachment. And they sent, after basic training and pre-flight, they sent them to the College Detachment, and they sent me to the University of Pittsburgh, and to make sure I could do the arithmetic for navigation and that sort of thing. Well, it turns out when they learned the education I did have, they sent me right out again. My class stayed there 2 months, and I was only there a few weeks because they recognized that what they were teaching was way beyond where I have already gone. So I jumped up ahead of class, move ahead of class.
Okay, and then from there, where did you go?
The next was a classification center where they put us through some very, very, very strenuous and technical tests. Out of that, you were assigned to be either a pilot or navigator or a bombardier. Okay. And I came out of that, and we went from there to that kind of training. I came out of pilot, and they sent me into pilot training.
When you were shipped overseas, where did they send you? Where did you land?
Well, I landed Liverpool. Now, I thought I was going to remember that, yeah. We landed in Liverpool on a regular, ordinary troop ship, although it wasn't like a lot of them. This was an ocean liner. It was a French Louis Pasteur, a passenger liner. Right. And landed in Liverpool, and I had orders to report to a fighter pilot training school. Even though I'd been trained to fly P47s and others, when I got over there, they started to train me as a combat pilot, and that's a different kettle of fish from just being a fighter pilot.
Okay, what is the difference? What?
If you're flying around in a fighter in the States, you got the civil air regulations. You don't go below certain altitudes, and you don't do this and you don't do that. When you're in combat, there may be some rules, but we didn't pay attention to them.
Okay. So it was a little
the red
more
line's on there.
stringent, I guess. It was a little more stringent training and maybe more dangerous
doing
training.
things you're going to have to do.
Yeah. Okay.
You're taught to come fly 5 feet above the ground and go under high tension lines and under bridges and and that takes a skill and some training.
Yeah. You were you were escorting bombers, right?
Well,
Is that
some of the time.
okay?
Some of the time, and if you're escorting bombers, you are briefed and you're told which bomber group you're going to escort, and they have identifying markings on the tails and things like that, and they fly in groups. We'd be tied to escort the 103 bomb group or some such thing, and the rendezvous point. The bombers are in England, and so are we, but we're hundreds of miles apart, and they take off hours before we do because they've assembled these big bomber task forces of thousands of bombers, and the fighters haven't got enough gas to fiddle around like that. We waited until they were well gone, and we pop off, and we were based. Our base was right near the east coast of England, coast of Europe, and we take off and go screaming on up and rendezvous with them, say, over the identified rendezvous point when they'd be coming along, and we'd come up and join them. And that was always just within minutes before they crossed into enemy territory.
Okay.
So we escorted them all the time they were in enemy territory.
Yeah. Okay, but sometimes you said you weren't escorting a
Oh
bomber.
yeah, that's right. I would say maybe 60% of our missions were bomber escorts, and the rest of them they got a lot of different names, but what they are in plain English is that the fighter group has a mission assigned to it to go into Europe someplace and shoot up or bomb or whatever. One of my 72nd mission, for example, was our fighter group went to Tempelhof Aerodrome in Berlin to strafe it.
Oh.
That's a lot worse than escorting bombers, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Was it more dangerous?
Oh yes, oh
Would
yes.
you have to fly lower?
Can you imagine somebody coming along and trying to bomb and strafe O'Hare in a war? What would happen to them?
You were probably flying a lot lower, I would assume.
Yeah, like you can't bang too sharp, or your wing will be in the ground. Because you don't want them to see you. You come in and you find some trees if you can. The last minute, pop up over the trees and right down across the field, right just above the ground. Lots of it's the bigger guns, the 88 millimeters. They aren't built to level their barrel that low. So if you're low enough, their shells go whistling over you.
Would you then have planes taking off after you also?
I've never had that happen.
No.
They were in there bombing the shelters and or whatever, but we shot them up pretty bad when we did that, and they wouldn't be very anxious to get out there in the open.
Okay. Were you flying the P47 at this time?
Well, I flew the P47 the first 40 missions, or 38, somewhere in there, and that was until November. I flew from early August till almost the end of November in P47s. But in the meantime, D-Day took place. It had taken place. They'd broken out and were moving across Europe, and the enemy territory is the part that's still occupied by them. The enemy territory was getting to a point where we were well past the center of France and Belgium and Holland before we even get enemy territory, and we could only, with the P47, we could only go about halfway from there to Berlin with the bombers, or we couldn't get back. We didn't have enough gas. So one day we were unscheduled not to fly, and while we were messing around on the field, a bunch of P51s circled the field. They came in and landed, got out of their planes, walked across, got in ours, and flew away. And we were a P51 group.
I'm more familiar with the P47. That was a fairly large plane for a fighter. Was the P51 bigger than that?
No, it was smaller.
No,
much smaller.
A little more maneuverability?
Yes, more maneuverability, and that's what you call a pilot's airplane.
You liked it better?
Oh yeah, all pilots like it better. Unless, if you were asking me seriously, I'd have to say to you, what is it you want me to do? because there are some missions, if you want me to go and strafe and try to get some pillboxes and to bend the bridges, concrete pillboxes, or that kind of thing where you know you're going to get hit by their bullets, I want the P47.
But you couldn't turn it, right? They couldn't turn very well, the P47s.
Oh, they could. They turned pretty well. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But they
didn't maneuver very quickly.
not as well as the P51. But the point is, they take so many.
They could take a licking.
That's right. You can get you can get hit pretty bad, and that thing will come home with you.
Yeah.
You can take a pistol, and if you hit the P51 in the right place, you're going to go down.
Wow.
So you if you aren't going to go any, if I pay no attention to what the mission is, just what I'd love to fly a P51, but I'd have to know what the mission was before I'd pick my plane.
You were so young. Was it difficult for you that first time? Can you describe your feelings if you can remember?
Yeah, everybody's a little bit scared. I can remember my third mission. I can't remember that is anything particular about it. But on my third mission, we were up over Holland, about 22,000 feet up and heading on into Germany, probably up to get an escort or something. And of course we keep looking around, so other planes, enemies don't shoot you down, you know. And I looked back and I saw behind me 5 black bursts. A 88 millimeter German had taken 5 shots at me, got me on his radar, and every one of them was behind me. And they were getting closer and closer to me, and I didn't even know they were there until I looked back. Well, I moved real quick, and dove, turned, pulled up, and just as I pulled up, the 6th shot exploded right up, just to the right of the plane, and about 10 feet in front of me, but a little above me. So the shrapnel went up. I didn't get hit with it, but I learned that those shells are red when they go off. They're not black. When you see the black puffs, that's the residue. If you're close enough and looking at it, it's red. That's the only time I ever saw that. But anyway, that woke me up to the fact that I was really in a war. I had loved being a fighter pilot. I just loved this strafing around on the ground, shooting up stuff on the ground in practice and training, and you know, that was a real high. That was fun. And I went on the first couple of missions, and nothing particular. That's the first time it dawned on me that I'm just getting started and I'm going to have to fly 50 or 60 or 70 of these, and there ain't no way in hell that I'm going to get out of this.
I've interviewed both bomber pilots and co-pilots and fighter pilots, and I never asked this question before, but you just made me think of this. Did you ever feel really helpless when, the bombers were flying in formation, and when one of them would go down, for instance?
Yeah.
What was your feeling in something like that?
When a bomber went down? Because I was up there escorting them sometimes when that did happen.
Was that difficult for you, or were things just happening so fast that it hardly registered at the time?
Well, you know, I just feel awful sorry for the 10 guys in every bomber, you know, but it was just the way war was. It didn't do much to me, really.
Did you, when you were on escort, were you alone, or did you travel in pairs?
Oh, the whole Fighter Squadron, which would normally be 16 planes, 4 flights of 4. And in the last half of my missions, we always got this maximum effort from headquarters.
Right.
Well, that means put every airplane you can in the air, and then we would fly 5 flights of 4. So it's either 16 or 20, and we take off. And there's 3 squadrons. So when we take off as a group, 60 fighters take off. 3 groups of 20. 3 groups of 20. So 3 squadrons. I mean, 3 squadrons of 20 each. The group 60. When we get up there and get into the battle situations, each squadron commander takes his squadron and does his things, and he will dispatch some of his flight, 2 of the flights he's got with him, for example, or 1 flight of 4 or 2 flight of 8 or whatever, and he will dispatch them to do whatever the fight you're in calls for.
Okay.
You're never up there alone.
Right.
If you get in a fighter aerial combat, it breaks up real fast. Even if you started out with 100 planes, it's real fast. You're chasing one, and by the time that's over, you look around, there ain't no airplanes. They go so fast, and they're gone. First thing you do is to look for an American fighter and join up with them.
Okay.
Because it's very, very unsafe to be alone.
Did the missions become easier as time went on, or did it change or not change for you?
Well, they got longer, much deeper into Germany, and we went to really way into Czechoslovakia and Dresden and long, long ways. And sometimes we were in hazard for getting back with gas, that sort of thing. As I got more and more missions, I got more responsibility. When I became a flight commander and was responsible for one of those flights of 4 on a mission, I always flew the bad missions. I wouldn't, as a flight commander, send my pilots into the bad ones and take an easy one. No way. So the missions get tougher just because your job is to lead and not send them out.
How many people were in your plane? Was it just you or
One.
just one person?
You're the pilot, the navigator, and the bombardier, and the whole schmear.
You received 7 air medals. That's quite a lot. Can you tell me what specifically they were given for?
Actually, air medal, I was given an air medal after 10 missions. I got an air medal, and after 20 I got an air medal, and after 30 I got an air medal.
Okay. So those were kind of an automatic.
Yeah, as long as you stay alive, you'll get air medals. A fighter pilot I'm talking about now.
Right.
Yeah.
How about the Distinguished Flying Cross? Was
Well,
there a special mission that...
No, it's the powers that be has to think that you did something that merited that. Something where you put your life on the line and survived it. And when I got the Distinguished Flying Cross, I was surprised because it was put in by the colonel, and I hadn't done anything but the routine stuff, and I wondered why I got one of them things. And it turns out, and we were in a big air fight. In fact, only about the second mission after we in P51s, we ran into a group of about 100 German fighters coming after the bombers, and our job was to go for them and stop it. And we did stop it, but we got our group fighting that many. And it reads on the citation that I led a group of 8 against 30 fighters, 30 Germans, and I didn't think anything. It's just routine day, but it impressed them. But probably because in the battle, my wingman, we were why we're in a battle formation where my wingman's over there, so that I can look over and protect him, and he can look over and protect me, that kind of thing. And I noticed that a German fighter was coming right in on this to get him. And I have to tell you that in the early fighting there, we had guns jammed. It was only our second mission in P51s, and there was something about the guns that we didn't know. We knew later, but when I pulled the trigger when I'm standing right behind a German to shoot him down, I only had one of my 650 there's 350 caliber guns in each wing. Only one of mine fired, and I chased this guy and I hit him a couple times, but not enough to get him down, and ran out of ammunition. At that point, I had no armament, and it was then that fighter got on my wingman's tail, and I turned over and went right at him and forced him to fight me instead of my wingman, and I didn't have any guns. I think that was a piece of it. My wingman was saved.
Wow. Did you receive the presidential citation for that at the same time, or was that a different?
That was different.
Can you describe that occasion?
Yeah, in September of 1944, there was an airborne invasion behind the lines into Holland, Arnhem, Holland. There was going to be a drop of a large number of paratroopers in DC-3 transport planes, and they were towing gliders full of troops, and in there, and we flew 4 missions. My group did, and I flew 3 of the 4, and our job was for the 3 days before this happened. Our job was to fly over that whole area where the troops were going to be dropping. Our assigned altitude was 2,000 feet, very, very low, at very low power, trying to get them to shoot at us, because then we'd go down and knock them out. In Stars and Stripes, the newspaper, the military service, they described our missions as suicide flying. And I flew 3 of the 4. And the unit, the whole group did this. And so the group was given that citation for carrying out those 4 missions.
Did you often feel as if it was just the luck of the draw kind of thing, that you made it through a mission? Was it?
Well, there's some of that. There's absolutely that, because you can be flying along, or I can go down strafing something and not get hit, and the guy right next to me, a bullet hits him, and that's just the luck of the draw. But you can protect yourself. I'll give you an example. After I had this experience of this radar guy tracking me, that was my 3rd mission. I never again flew on a mission straight and level. I'd fly like this. And the guys, my people in my squadron, we're the only squadron that did it. I was the only guy that did that. But I never flew straight and at the same altitude and at the same heading ever again on a mission. Well, that's so it isn't all luck,
A lot of it is skill.
Right.
Yeah. On an average, how long was one of your missions?
When the P47, they averaged just under 4 hours. In the P51s, they averaged almost 6 hours.
And did you fly night and daytime missions? Did it vary?
Our missions were primarily daytime missions. We would take off in the dark, and we very often would get back in the dark. Depends on what. We don't always take off. We might take off at noon and come back 7 o'clock. And in winter, I flew through winter over there, and in the winter it's dark. So, they're planned. The bombers did daylight bombing.
Oh, okay.
But by the time, if you're deep enough in Germany, by the time you get back, it's dark lots of times.
Were any of your group ever shot down or injured on any of the missions? Anyone that you were in charge of? Oh.
I've had a number of experiences. I took off in a P51, heading for Dresden, and 3.5 hours later, well, I returned in a bomber. Many fighter pilots heads out on the mission in a fighter and turns on in a bomber. And I had to go down in Belgium because of mechanical problems. And I was I was missing for 4 days one time.
Oh, really? Was that also in Belgium? Or was that in Belgium also?
No, that was in Paris at that time.
Oh.
That's where I was way up north and deep in Germany when the 8th Air Force, this only happened one time in my whole career, the 8th Air Force in England told on the radio all the bomber groups and all the fighter groups over Europe, don't try to come back to England. The weather is too bad. You can't do it. We don't want you over here. Go where you want it, wherever you want it. Well, me and my flight to Paris, we're not dumb. It was liberated at that time. And the weather stayed so bad that we couldn't get out of Paris. And it was 4 days before we could get out. If it had been a mission, we'd have gone. Because on a mission, let me just say this to you, the bombers take off, we're going to escort a certain bombers in a fighter group, and they're hundreds of miles away where they take off, so you're an hour's difference, your base can be socked in total awful. If your bomber's in the air, you go, period. I never was forced down in enemy territory, that for example, and I have landed in various airports in Belgium and France because of low fuel or something. But and if the bullets aren't disabling to you, why you just go right on back. But I came back every time I walked around the plane. I was surprised to see so many holes in it. You don't feel them necessarily.
In the movies, sometimes you see these fighter planes going at it and everything, and they can actually see the enemy in their plane. Is that even close to reality?
You mean eyeball to eyeball?
Yeah. Did you ever get close enough to actually see a person?
Yeah, I have.
Really?
Yeah. In that, when I told you that I was on the tail of this guy and only had one gun, you're always overtaking him. So, and I didn't get him shined down. I came right up on his wing, and he's right over there, 25 feet over. I could look him right in the eyeball. But I didn't have any guns, so I wasn't about to tempt anything. I just snuck away. But another time I did this, I shot down a jet near the end of my career, and nobody shoots down a jet unless it's certain strange circumstances. You'll never hear a fighter pilot say, I engaged him in aerial combat and beat him up and shot him down. It ain't happened. Anybody who tells you he shot down a jet, he caught him in the traffic pattern. He's flying over on the way back to England. Here this guy's down there about to land in the field. Shoot him out of the landing pattern. That kind of thing. But this was a little different than that. I chased him a long time. And evening, it was like 5 o'clock after a mission, and we were escorting the last group of bombers in Germany that day, and we were back in Holland. We were just about to cross the North Atlantic back to England, and I saw this plane head that way, and I called Mike Inell, the guy in that picture there. I said, Mike, I got a guy out of here, and he's going the wrong way at the wrong time and awful fast. He said, go get him if you want him. I didn't have to do this. And so and he said, take your flight. So the four of us turned and went after him. And we chased him almost. He was almost to Berlin. And just barely could see him. Visibility was awful. And I was about to give up. And he took a wide sweeping turn up towards Hamburg, and I cut across the diameter of the circle. And I approached him. I'm cruising about 450, and I approached him just like this. But the visibility is so bad, he didn't see me. I crossed him behind his wing, and about 5 feet below the plane, right under the fuselage, and that's the first I knew it was a German, the Iron Cross on the fuselage. And so I picked. All you got to do is push the mic button. It's on the control you got in your hand. And I said, it's a German. And as I was approaching the fuselage, I looked to my left behind to the wing, and I was looking right up the tailpipe of a jet on this wing. Well, that means there's another jet on the other wing, you know. So I said, what I said was a German jet. Some clown punched his mic button, and he said, what kind of a jet did you expect to find? We didn't have jets. Only the Germans had jets. So I found later Mike Yannell was the guy. He was up over England, nice, fat, and happy, and safe. But anyway, here's what happened. I went under him, and I couldn't turn left, or I'd been going so fast I'd go out in front of him, he could shoot me down. I couldn't, going so fast I couldn't turn around. I assume he saw me. Well, you can't bend a fighter. They're going that fast, around that fast. He'd get away. So I just pulled it up like that, chopped the throttle, dropped the flaps, stalled it around, came around like this. He's down here. Came around like this. Now I was upside down, going the same, right over him, only I'm upside down. And then I did the back half of a barrel roll. A barrel roll is when you take a plane and barrel roll. I did the back half of a barrel roll, came right in on his wing. He was no further from me than that clock. And he's tootling along.
Wow.
He's looking around. He looked over here like this. The best double take.
He didn't see you.
No, he didn't. He hadn't seen me.
Wow.
He hadn't seen me yet. So
Wow.
he bailed out, and I shot the jet down after he was out of it.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's a story of the hunt, not the shootout isn't much. But I told that story to a group of airmen at Blue Ash Airport, and they thought, oh, well, what the hell? The guy jumped out of the airplane. He did nothing. He didn't shoot anything down. They don't know that nobody shoots down a jet unless you catch him in some stupid thing. And I felt proud of myself for the hunt.
Yeah.
Well, back at the end of the mission, low on gas, turn around and run all the way back to Berlin, take a jet, and we just barely had enough gas to get back when that was over.
Can you tell me one or two of your most memorable experiences, something that might just stand out in your mind?
Well, that was one of them. There were so many that were just ordinary stuff. I guess one of the things is that I always felt real good to be in this role. When we escorted bombers in, and when they approaching the target where the massive amount of flak is, the fighters would go around and meet them when they came off. And then when they came off, they were shot up pretty bad. Sometimes they were spinning down, and one or two engines going, and that sort of thing. And we would, if they had anything less than their full four engines, they can't keep up with their own group. They're called a straggler. And then a straggler would never get from Berlin to England. The Germans would shoot him down. So we always had to dispatch somebody or a pair of guys, fighters, to bring out disabled bombers. And I had one time that was starting to do that, and the pilot on the plane asked me if I'd lead him out. And I said, sure. And he said, his navigator had been killed. You see, a fighter is always alone. You got to know where you got to know how to navigate, see. But a bomber, he just asked his navigator where to fly, and he did it. And when the navigator gets killed, they're in deep, deep trouble.
So you led him back.
Huh?
You led him back then.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we in that particular case, my wingman was over on the other side, and we were, of course, we were up above him to protect him if somebody come down. But yeah, we took them all the way to the coast of England, and they recognized that visually and knew where their base was. So yeah, but that's a thrilling thing to do.
What do you feel was your biggest achievement during your time in the service?
Well, I guess becoming a fighter pilot, being on the front lines, flying frontline fighters on missions every day, flying with the best against the best Germans, and just getting there. There's so at the end of every phase or in the middle of every phase, the guys wash out and you never see them again, or they get sent off to be instructors instead of whatever, and to end up with a frontline fighter group where the heroes are. I told you I got over to England and had that training school. My instructor was Joe Powers. A month earlier than that, Mark and I were in Delaware learning for me to play a P47. We opened up a Saturday Evening Post. Great big article about Joe Powers, fighter pilot in Europe. He was famous. When I got over there, he was my instructor. Wow. So I had really gotten someplace I never dreamed I'd get.